Good evening, Steelers Nation. We're now in the month of June, but Pittsburgh never sleeps. And you need to stay alert because everything surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers right now is creating a fascinating debate among fans. Because for the first time in a long time, there is a clear shift happening on offense under Mike McCarthy. The expectation is that Pittsburgh will throw the football more often, use more designed passing concepts, and move toward a system that looks different from what fans became accustomed to under previous offensive approaches. But the biggest question being asked across Steelers Nation is simple. Can this team evolve offensively without losing the identity that has defined the franchise for generations? The answer coming from inside the conversation around the team appears to be yes. There's a growing belief that while the Steelers may change how they attack opponents, they are not changing who they are. Physicality remains at the center of everything. The franchise has built its reputation on toughness, dominance in the trenches, and imposing its will on opponents. That identity stretches back decades and has survived multiple eras of football. Whether the Steelers were winning championships with the steel curtain, competing with dominant defenses in later generations, or lighting up scoreboards with explosive offenses, there was always one common thread. They were tough. That is why many people inside the discussion around this team are pushing back against the idea that a more pass-oriented offense automatically means a softer football team. History supports that argument. The Steelers have previously operated as pass-first teams without sacrificing their physical edge. During the later years of Ben Roethlisberger's career, Pittsburgh featured one of the league's most dangerous passing attacks. Antonio Brown was dominating defenses. Le'Veon Bell was a major receiving threat. The offense could attack opponents all over the field, yet nobody would describe those teams as lacking toughness. Those rosters were loaded with physical players. The offensive line featured leaders who consistently controlled the line of scrimmage. Defensively, players like Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt helped establish a tone every week. The Steelers remained a team opponents dreaded facing because they knew every game would become a battle. That is the comparison many are making when evaluating Mike McCarthy's vision. The offense may look different. Fans may see fewer heavy formations. There may be fewer situations with multiple tight ends packed onto the field. The ball may come out faster. Passing concepts may become more prominent, but none of that necessarily changes the mentality of the roster. In fact, when you look at the personnel Pittsburgh has assembled, the argument for maintaining physicality becomes even stronger. Darnell Washington remains one of the most imposing players on the roster. Roman Wilson has earned praise for his toughness. Jaylen Warren continues to play with relentless energy and aggression. Even among the wide receivers, there is a noticeable emphasis on size and physical play. More importantly, the Steelers have continued investing heavily in the trenches. Since Omar Khan took over, the organization has dedicated significant resources toward rebuilding both the offensive and defensive lines. Zach Frazier, Troy Fautanu, Broderick Jones, Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton, and several other investments demonstrate a clear organizational priority. Pittsburgh wants to win up front, and that matters because throughout franchise history, the Steelers have always believed that championship teams are built from the inside out. When previous Steelers teams had dominant offensive and defensive lines, it allowed them to invest elsewhere. Strong trench play created opportunities to add explosive weapons, strengthen other positions, and build complete rosters capable of competing for championships. That philosophy appears alive and well today. Another important factor is Mike McCarthy himself. There is a belief that McCarthy fully understands what Steelers football represents. He understands the environment of the AFC North. He understands the challenges that come with playing outdoors late in the season. He understands the importance of winning games in cold weather against physical opponents. Because of that, many believe he has no intention of abandoning the traditional foundation that has made Pittsburgh successful. The goal isn't to stop being physical. The goal is to become more modern while remaining physical. That distinction is critical. The best teams in today's NFL have shown that you can embrace modern offensive concepts while still dominating the line of scrimmage. You can throw the football effectively while maintaining toughness. You can evolve without abandoning your identity. For the Steelers, that may be exactly what this transition is about. The roster construction suggests it. The investment suggests it. The comments surrounding the team suggest it. And if Pittsburgh successfully combines a more dynamic passing attack with the same hard-nosed mentality that has defined the franchise for decades, the Steelers could become a very different challenge for opponents throughout the AFC. But there is another major development that could dramatically impact Pittsburgh's future in the division, and it involves one of the biggest names the Steelers have battled against for years. With Myles Garrett now gone from the AFC North, has the balance of power inside the division just changed more than most fans realize? The departure of Myles Garrett from the AFC North is the kind of move that immediately changes conversations around the division, and for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the implications could be much bigger than many people initially realize. For years, every time the Steelers prepared to face Cleveland, one name dominated the game plan. It was impossible to ignore the impact Garrett had on every snap. Offensive coordinators had to account for him. Offensive tackles had to prepare specifically for him. Quarterbacks had to understand where he was lined up before the ball was even snapped. Whether fans liked it or not, Garrett became one of the defining defensive players in the AFC North. Now that challenge is gone. And while Cleveland receives a significant return in the trade, including Jared Verse and valuable draft capital, there is no denying that the Browns are moving into a completely different phase as an organization. The timing of this move is what makes it especially interesting. When teams trade away a player of Garrett's caliber, they are usually making a statement about their future direction. Organizations don't willingly part with elite pass rushers in the middle of a championship window. They do it when they believe a larger rebuild or restructuring is necessary. That is why many observers view this as a signal that Cleveland is looking ahead rather than trying to compete immediately. From Pittsburgh's perspective, that matters. The Steelers have struggled in Cleveland more than many fans would like to admit. Winning games at Browns Stadium has not been nearly as automatic as it once was. In recent years, Cleveland became one of the more difficult divisional road trips on the schedule. Some of that was because of Garrett. Some of it was because the Browns consistently managed to make those matchups ugly, physical, and difficult. The Steelers often found themselves pulled into low-scoring battles where every mistake became magnified. Now the question becomes whether those dynamics change moving forward. Jared Verse is a talented young player. Nobody should pretend otherwise. He is explosive, athletic, and has the potential to become a cornerstone defender, but replacing a proven superstar is rarely a simple process. There is a difference between potential and production. Garrett was already one of the most feared defenders in football. Verse still has to prove he can reach that level. That reality alone could make life easier for Pittsburgh's offensive line, particularly as the Steelers continue developing their young group up front. The organization has invested heavily in players like Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, and Zach Frazier because they believe those players represent the future of the offense. Every year those players gain experience is another step toward building the dominant front the Steelers envision. Not having to face Garrett twice a year certainly doesn't hurt that development, but the bigger story may not be about who left. It may be about what Cleveland's future now looks like. When a franchise trades away one of its cornerstone players, questions naturally emerge about everyone else on the roster. Veteran players want to compete. They want opportunities to win. And when an organization appears to be taking a step back in the short term, uncertainty begins spreading throughout the locker room. Several established players in Cleveland could eventually find themselves wondering where the franchise is headed. If more changes occur in the coming months or next offseason, the Browns could look dramatically different from the team Pittsburgh has been battling over the last several years. That possibility matters because the AFC North remains one of the toughest divisions in football. The Steelers still have to deal with Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. They still have to deal with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Those challenges are not going away. But if Cleveland enters a rebuilding phase, while Pittsburgh continues building around its current core, the balance inside the division could shift significantly. And that brings us back to the Steelers themselves. Because while everyone is discussing Cleveland's future, Pittsburgh is quietly trying to establish its own foundation for the years ahead. One player who could become incredibly important in that process is Peyton Wilson. Inside the organization, there appears to be growing confidence in his development. Patrick Queen recently spoke highly of Wilson's growth, particularly when it comes to communication, leadership responsibilities, and understanding the defense at a deeper level. Those details might not generate headlines, but they are often the exact things that separate talented players from future defensive leaders. Wilson has made it clear that he wants to understand every call, every adjustment, and every responsibility. The goal is not simply to play fast. The goal is to become a complete linebacker capable of helping run the defense. That mindset has impressed teammates, and the Steelers need it to translate onto the field. There is no secret about Pittsburgh's history at inside linebacker. Some of the greatest defenses in franchise history were led by dominant players in that position group. The Steelers have always valued linebackers who could communicate, make plays, and serve as emotional leaders. Peyton Wilson is trying to become that type of player. The talent is there. The athleticism is there. The opportunity is there. Now comes the most important step. Can he turn potential into production? Because if Wilson takes a major leap forward this season, the Steelers may have found another foundational piece for the future. If he doesn't, Pittsburgh could find itself searching once again for answers at one of the most important positions in its defensive structure, and considering how much the organization has invested in building a championship caliber roster, that development may end up being one of the biggest storylines of the entire season. The Steelers are changing offensively. The AFC North is changing around them. Young players are being asked to take larger roles. Expectations are growing across the roster. The question now is whether Pittsburgh is truly ready to capitalize on all these changes and take the next step toward becoming a legitimate contender once again. What makes the Peyton Wilson discussion so important is that it extends far beyond one individual player. It speaks directly to how the Steelers envision the future of their defense, and perhaps more importantly, whether the organization has finally found the next linebacker capable of becoming a centerpiece of the unit. The encouraging sign for Pittsburgh is that Wilson's development is no longer being discussed only in terms of athletic traits. Everyone already knew he could run. Everyone already knew he possessed speed, range, and the ability to move sideline to sideline. Those qualities were evident before he even arrived in the NFL. What teammates and coaches want to see now is mastery of the position. That means understanding every defensive adjustment. That means recognizing formations before the snap. That means communicating quickly and confidently when offenses attempt to disguise their intentions. And according to the discussions taking place around the team, Wilson is embracing those responsibilities. Patrick Queen's comments were particularly noteworthy because they highlighted something fans rarely get to see. While supporters focus on tackles, interceptions, and splash plays, linebackers often earn trust through communication. They become valuable because they know where everyone needs to be and can help ensure the entire defense operates efficiently. For a young player, earning that level of confidence from a veteran teammate is significant. At the same time, there is no avoiding the reality that Wilson still has work to do. The expectation entering last season was that he and Patrick Queen could eventually become an every down linebacker duo. The Steelers envisioned